Well, g'day everybody, Marcus O'Dean here from Shooter TV. I'm here today to talk to you about the new Lee Classic powder measure. It's a cracker, but before we do, I'll get on and show you a little bit about powder measuring in general, a bit of a how-to, and we can go from there and have a good look at this product. Before we get on to talking about the Lee powder measure and actually going through its features and showing you how to operate it, it behoves me to tell you a little bit about different methods of powder measuring, and they all have their place. And pardon the handheld, but I'm going to sweep through a few different items here just to let you know. First up, the very most basic one you can really think about is the powder and dipper method. If you've got a chart that Richard Lee provides with his powder dipper measures, you're in front of the game there, because he provides basic low pressure loads for lots of calibers in that dipper kit, and you can just go ahead and use that as your volumetric powder measure quite safely with the recommended powders. Going on, you could just use a beam balance scale as well, or use them in conjunction with the powder dipper. The beam balance scale will give you highly accurate readings and consistent powder measures. However, you need to wait for that beam to balance, and it can take some time. It is a very good way, however, to measure or to calibrate your powder measure and to go on from there. The other alternatives are electronic powder measures like this Lyman Gen 6, which I'm enamoured of. They're a great little product. And they're good for volume hand loading, for doing load development where you have to change loads fairly often and in small increments, and they're just another way to do things. But today we're here to talk about the Lee Classic Cast measure, which is a step up from the old Lee powder measure. You can see mine there. It's had a lot of use and it's been fantastically reliable, lightweight. There's nothing to it, but it does a fantastic consistent job on stick powders and granulated powders like the BM2 powder range. Anyway, we'll get back onto it. Now, it always pays when you get a new powder measure to run a couple of hoppers of powder through the measure, or else prime it with a little bit of powdered graphite through the working parts, and that will get you measuring consistently and accurately a little bit more quickly. I've worked a hopper full of AR2208 through this new Lee Classic cast powder thrower. Have a look at it. It's built of cast iron, the main body. It's got a great volumetric measuring chamber here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And it doesn't come standard with this metal base, which I've just clamped to the bench until I permanently mount it. But it is a really convenient way to use it. In fact, it's so solid, this metal bench plate here, that you can actually operate it without clamping it to the bench. It does rock a little bit, but I was getting quite consistent reads out of it when I was playing with it earlier. Well, people might ask that in the age of electronics, why would you use a powder thrower? It throws submaximal loads with sufficient accuracy and repeatability for volume work, where you don't have to repeatedly measure and find out exactly what you're throwing. Give you an example, if I'm shooting a 308 mild load of 45 grains of 08 behind a 150 grain bullet, something like 2 grains below maximum, I can confidently charge straight into the case with a powder thrower, as long as I'm not expecting 1,000-yard accuracy but want good hunting accuracy or service rifle accuracy. A powder thrower will do it fantastically. You can be highly accurate if you throw and trickle with a scale, but to get good repeatability, consistent technique from one throw to the next is essential. So how do we set up to throw consistent charges on a thrower? I'll explain that next. Yeah, well, you remember I mentioned the volumetric powder chamber here. It is very precise, and it relates to a table that is contained in the instruction manual that comes with your Lee powder thrower. And what it has here is the volume measured density for 1 grain of powder for a listing of a heap of powders down here. Now, for argument's sake, we've used what we call here Hodgdon Varget in the States, which is AR2208, which is what I have in the metering chamber, and it shows 0.0731 as the volume per grain of AR2208. Alright, now I'll show you how to go from there. What we do is we multiply the volume per grain of powder, and here I've worked it out on paper, which is 0.0731 by the charge that we want to use. Now in this case it's 45 grains, and you set your drum volume setting to the product of that 0.0731 multiplied by 45, which gives you a figure of 3.28. Now you recall that the figure that I arrived at to apply to the volume measure here was 3.2895 for the quoted volume in the instructions here. Well, look, this has given me just an amazingly accurate reading when I've actually thrown charges and come to 45 grains of 2208. And the way you measure that is, just let me use a pointer, is this is your main scale. There is the 3, there is 1, 2 and 3 on the right. Just below the 3 is where I have my setting, which makes it 3.28, and we come down here and we're halfway between the 9 and the 0, meaning 9.5. It is staggeringly accurate just for a load that I've plucked. Now we'll go on and give you a tip. Oh, by the way, you just release this little tab here, and from there you can alter, using this little knurled knob, the volume of the powder in that little powder measure chamber. So for argument's sake now, we want to accurately throw consistent repeated throws of 45 grains of our selected powder, AR2208. Believe me, if you can't see this in detail, I'm just winding it up to 45 grains. Now, once you've fiddled around a bit with this setting here to get exactly 45 grains, what I'd suggest you do, and what is a really good way to get repeated accurate throws, is to measure out 3 consecutive measures into the one pan. I'll show you what we're doing here. We just do it nice and consistently each time. No need to rush it. And what we now have is 3 times 45 grains, which is 135 grains. So what we now do is move our beam balance scale up to 130, and we're already on 5, and we see how that goes on the scale, and we adjust it till it's accurately at 135 grains. Have a look at it balancing out now. She's a little bit low. You might want to up that a little bit. And try again. Okay, and we're coming down and we're just about on it, maybe a little bit high. We might leave that there for the purposes of the demonstration. Throw it back into the hopper and come back to our original setting of 45 grains, and let's try and throw one charge or a few charges and see how we go here. I've lost a bit out of the pan there. Okay, so first charge, about 45.1. You remember it was reading a little bit high up at 135 grains. Coming down now, 45.2. Another throw, we're around the 45.2, 45.3. Okay, now I used 3 different throwing methods then. Just watch to see how an absolutely consistent throw method and technique will standardise your charge weight. Here we go. I'm holding the pan right hard up against the drop tube. 1,000, 2,000, drop. And we're on about 45.2. That little mark I've put above the balance mark indicates 0.2 of a grain over. Let's do it again. Or 1,000, 2,000, drop. About 45.1 or 2. We're in 0.1 a grain, within 0.1 of a grain. 1,000, 2,000, drop. And here we go for our third charge. And again, very consistent. It's right in there at 45.1 to 2. So that's how you get consistency and accuracy out of your powder measure. I could tweak that again and bring it down and do the whole exercise again, but say you're doing 50 or 100 rounds for your service rifle or for your bulk hunting rifle, great way to do it. Well guys, you might think that I'm a bit biased towards Lee products, and there's a very good reason for that. It's because they work. They're reasonably priced, and they're innovative. Now, there are some products out there that Lee's made that just, as I've heard some American commenters say, Richard Lee gets up on the other side of the bed to everybody else in the morning. Well, this is a pretty conventional powder measure. It's beautifully executed, made of solid materials that'll last 1,000-year right. I'm particularly impressed with the volume measurement chamber here and how that's adjusted and how it works. It's just a really well thought out piece of gear, and it's a pleasure to use. The charging handle, hardly any effort there, and it does the business each time very accurately to within, I would say, once you get your technique right, the magic 0.1 of a grain. The other thing that Lee does really well is their instructions. In good old, clear expression, good grammar American. And this one tells you everything you need to know about this powder measure. The other thing is the warranty on Lee. If you've got a problem, you send it back to the States and they'll fix it and send it back for nothing for free. Or replace the product. They are just so good, like a lot of American firms nowadays. I am so impressed with this product. It just builds on Lee's reputation in my mind, and if you are looking for a very durable powder measure to do those tasks to which a powder measure is suited, or you just want a bit of a break from using electronics and staring at a screen if you have been all day at work like I do, It's nice to get back to a little mechanical process where you put a bit more input into it. I think you'd be well served to get one of these. They're about 140 bucks, but gee, what a product. So enjoy it when you get it, and look, I hope you enjoy your hand loading, and please be safe when you do it. Now, one last little tip to your hand loaders here. This is the powder hopper off my other leaf powder measure, the old one. The little plasticky piece of crap that just keeps on going and going and doing a marvellous job. It's just a little modification that you might like to use. You can probably see through all the grunge on the outside of this that about a third of the way up the powder measure hopper, the powder hopper, there's a bit of black there. Well, I'll tell you what that is. It's a, you can probably see it there, I hope you can. It's a broad rubber washer with a hole cut in the middle of it. Now, there is a purpose for that, and that purpose is that once you've filled the hopper up with powder, when you get have all that weight bearing down, you will get a different distribution of powder down at the bottom in the fill chamber if you don't equalise the weight. And when you put a washer in up here, it relieves a bit of weight on it and allows you to have consistency of pressure on your powder column so that you throw consistent charges. It's a really simple fix. Pretty simple to do. It sort of wobbles around in there and it's not quite even, but it does the trick. It's a really good little tip. So I hope you enjoy that, and hopefully you take it on board and get some better results out of your hand loading.